Before we dive into today's story, I want you to pause for just a moment and think about the last time you saw a simple act of kindness ripple far beyond what anyone expected. That's what this story is about. How one tiny challenge, born out of lockdown boredom, grew into a movement that raised millions for healthcare workers and gave hope to an entire nation. If you believe in the power of small actions creating big change, then you're going to want to hear this through to the end. And before we start, don't forget to subscribe, because stories like this, stories that remind us of our shared humanity, deserve to be remembered, and I promise to bring you more tales that will inspire, uplift, and keep your faith in kindness alive. In the spring of 2020, the world was silent in a way it had never been before. Streets that once bustled with morning commutes were empty. Schools closed their doors, restaurants pulled down their shutters, airports sat idle. The COVID-19 pandemic had turned cities into ghost towns, and the weight of fear hung heavy in the air. In the United Kingdom, as in much of the world, people were confined to their homes, unsure when life would return to normal, unsure if their loved ones would be safe, unsure of how long they could endure the uncertainty. Yet, within that silence, something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would begin not with governments or corporations, but with one young woman and an idea so simple it seemed almost ordinary. Her name was Olivia Strong, a 27-year-old from Edinburgh who, like millions of others, found herself trapped in the stillness of lockdown. Olivia wasn't a politician, nor a celebrity, nor anyone with great resources at her disposal. She was simply a young woman who, while out for a jog one morning, felt the gnawing need to do something, anything, that could bring light into such a dark moment. As she pounded the pavement, thoughts of NHS workers weighed on her mind. Nurses, doctors, ambulance drivers, carers, they were risking everything while the rest of the country stayed home. They were tired, stretched thin, and many were falling ill themselves. Olivia thought, how can I help? What can one person do? That question became the seed of an idea. What if she asked her friends to run 5 kilometers, donate £5 to NHS charities together, and nominate 5 more people to do the same? It was small, manageable, something anyone could do, whether they were seasoned runners or people taking their first jog around the block. She called it, Run for Heroes. No one, not even Olivia herself, could have predicted that this tiny idea would explode into one of the biggest grassroots fundraising campaigns of the pandemic, raising millions and capturing the hearts of people across the UK and beyond. At first, it was just a handful of friends sharing videos of themselves running and donating. They tagged others, who did the same. Each run was shared on Instagram stories, each donation screenshot added fuel to the growing fire. There was no grand marketing campaign, no budget, no corporate sponsor. Just ordinary people in leggings and trainers, doing what they could to help. Within days, the challenge went viral. From London to Manchester, from small towns to seaside villages, people laced up their shoes and stepped outside, not just for exercise but for purpose. The magic of the challenge was in its simplicity. It wasn't about running fast or far. It wasn't a marathon or an ultra-endurance event. It was just 5K, a distance anyone could walk, jog, or run. The donation amount was modest too, £5, something accessible to almost everyone. And the act of nominating 5 friends ensured the movement spread like wildfire through social media. Suddenly, feeds were filled not with grim headlines, but with smiling, sweaty faces, proudly holding up fingers for 5K, £5, 5 friends. Celebrities joined in. David Beckham ran his 5K. Ellie Goulding laced up her shoes. Stephen Fry posted about it. Even politicians took part. The visibility skyrocketed, and soon the donations began to flood in. The original target Olivia set was £5,000, an amount she thought would be a wonderful contribution if they managed it. But that target was obliterated within 4 days. People were donating in such large numbers that the campaign had to raise its goal again and again. £10,000, £50,000, £100,000. By the time the wave of kindness had fully rolled through the country, the campaign had raised over £7 million for NHS charities together. To put that in perspective, £7 million wasn't just a number. It translated into critical support for frontline workers who were stretched to breaking point. It funded counseling services for exhausted NHS staff, provided iPads for patients cut off from their families in hospital wards, supported hot meals and rest areas for doctors and nurses working double shifts, and contributed to mental health resources long after the first lockdown lifted. Every pound raised was a lifeline, and it all began with one jogger and a simple idea. But beyond the money, what Run for Heroes really gave people was a sense of connection. During lockdown, many felt isolated and powerless. The 5K challenge gave them a way to feel part of something bigger, to contribute to the collective fight against the pandemic. Each run was more than exercise, it was an act of solidarity, a statement: we are in this together. We care. We will not let our heroes stand alone. Stories began to emerge of people who had never run before in their lives but decided to try because the cause mattered more than their discomfort. Families ran together, pushing strollers or jogging alongside dogs. Elderly participants walked their 5K around gardens or quiet streets. Children joined in, running short legs but with boundless energy. For many, it was the first time they had felt joy in weeks. For others, it was a way to process grief, to honor loved ones who had fallen ill, to channel anxiety into action. The ripple effect spread beyond the UK. Soon, people in other countries were taking part too, donating to their own healthcare systems while adopting the same 5K challenge format. The hashtag Run for Heroes became a global trend, with thousands of posts appearing daily. What began as a personal project became a worldwide movement, proof that kindness and creativity could break through even the heaviest clouds of despair. And yet, Olivia herself remained humble. She often said she never imagined it would grow so large. She credited the public, the runners, the donors, the sharers, for making it happen. It was never about one person, it was about collective action. But perhaps that was the lesson. Sometimes, all it takes is one spark to set off a chain reaction of light. Looking back, the legacy of Run for Heroes is not just the millions raised, but the reminder it left us with. In times of crisis, humans have an extraordinary capacity for generosity. Even when we are separated, we can find ways to come together. Even when we feel powerless, we can take small steps that make a difference. The challenge proved that the smallest of ideas, when fueled by kindness and shared by community, can reshape the narrative of an entire nation. For months, the news had been dominated by fear and numbers, case counts, death tolls, economic collapse. But suddenly, headlines also spoke of hope. 5K challenge raises millions for NHS. Run for Heroes spreads across the globe, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The story inspired not just runners, but artists, writers, and everyday people looking for ways to contribute. Kindness itself had gone viral, and in the darkest days of lockdown, that mattered more than anyone can measure. By the end of 2020, Run for Heroes had become a symbol of resilience. It reminded people that while governments and scientists worked on vaccines, while healthcare workers battled tirelessly in hospitals, the rest of us had roles to play too. We could support, uplift, and stand in solidarity. We could show gratitude not with words alone, but with action. That is why, even today, the story continues to be told, because it is not just about running or money, it is about the enduring power of kindness. And perhaps the greatest takeaway is this: we don't need a global crisis to show up for each other. We don't need a pandemic to remind us of our shared humanity. What Olivia Strong sparked was not a one-time event, but a blueprint for how collective generosity can work. Anyone, anywhere, at any time, can start something that changes lives. You don't need millions of followers, or deep pockets, or official titles. You just need to care enough to act, and the rest will follow. This is the story of Run for Heroes, the challenge that started with one young woman, one idea, and one run, and ended up raising millions while lifting an entire nation's spirit. And here's where you come in. You might not think of yourself as a hero, but every act of kindness you choose matters. Maybe you can't run 5K, maybe you can't donate £5, but you can call a friend who feels alone, help a neighbor with groceries, or share a message of hope that reaches someone who needs it. If this story moved you, don't just let it pass, let it inspire you to act. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that prove the world is still full of light, then subscribe now. Because kindness doesn't end with one challenge, and neither should we. Together, we can keep running toward a better tomorrow.